What's good, people? It's the Fantasy Sports Markets podcast on the FSM Network. Ben Heisler here. I'll be joined in just a minute by my buddy Derek Brown. He is back after a Week 6 hiatus for both of us, but we have since returned, ready to help you dominate the Week 7 slate. Before we get to our buddy Debro, a couple of quick bit of house cleaning announcements, whatever you want to call them, over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. This is busy time, you guys. We got NBA coming up next Tuesday. We'll have a big contest over at fantasysportsmarkets.com ahead of the slate for NFL and college football, so you can check that out. Get your NBA lineups in before the start of the weekend. College football, $5 entry, $100 to first with a $100,000 perfect roster bonus this weekend. We have doubled from $50 to first to $100 for first over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. So even if you don't know anything about college, you might as well throw in a shot or two, especially if you are watching the video and you see the promo code TQE for $5 free. That is a $5 free entry for a shot at over $100,000 this week over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. And of course, you know, best place to play NFL, including over $220,000 up for grabs this week with all of our different contests over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Benny Heiss, at FSM Contests. We are on Instagram as well, at Fantasy Sports Markets, and plenty of other places you can find us, including the FSM Network over on YouTube and on Periscope. All the details for that are in the description below. Last but not least, if you guys have enjoyed the fine people that we bring on the show, go ahead and rate and review the podcast over in Apple Podcasts. And last but not least, you guys should check out the Quant Edge video series that my buddy Derek and I are a part of over at thequantedge.com. Check them out. They do outstanding work. Use promo code POWERHOUR, I believe, to get $10 off your first month over at thequantedge.com. Speaking of, Derek Brown is back with us, breaking down the slate for week number 7. Don't look surprised on the video stream. You knew at some point you were gonna get introduced, man. What's going on?
What is up, Benny, dude? It's a good week. I think we get on here, we talk about slates every single week.
Yeah.
And I keep going back and forth, and I keep finding ones I'm like, I really love these matchups. I love this. This might be my favorite slate of the entire year so far. I'm loving it.
Yeah,
loving it.
I think it was a good thing for me that I took off week 6 because I was what you would call wrong on a lot of plays in week 6. So I think this is as good of an opportunity for all of us to bounce back and really get our mojo back. So are you ready to go?
Let's roll, man.
Okay, let's start with the Raiders going to Green Bay. Doesn't it feel like the Packers have played like every single game at home this year? It's week number 7. I feel like this is their 5th home game of the season, other than that road win at Chicago and then, of course, that dominating performance on the road to Dallas. But meanwhile, the Packers get to stay at home where they get favorable refs coming off that big win against the Lions. They are 5.5-point favorites against the Raiders, although that total has dropped from 6.5 to 5.5, and the total for the game has stayed at 46.5 for this matchup. We've always talked about going up against Green Bay, Derek, when it comes to trying to play running backs. Certainly a couple weeks ago, Ezekiel Elliott was in play. Kerryon Johnson was in play for the Monday night game. Where do you stand on Josh Jacobs this week? Do you think he is in another favorable spot, especially for the Raiders, who really incorporated Josh Jacobs well in their big win in London against the Bears?
Yeah, so I like Jacobs. I think the big question that you have to ask yourself about Jacobs is, outside of the stat lines, what do you think happens in this game? If you think the Raiders can possibly keep this game close, then Jacobs is in a smash spot. Because if you look at the last 2 weeks, the Raiders have been in either positive or neutral game script in both of those games. And so with Josh Jacobs, his stats have gone up. But that's not so much to say that Jalen Richard is totally out of the picture, because the guy's still running routes. He's still involved. It's just been two weeks of perfect game scripts for Jacobs to be the guy that's sit here and tote the rock continuously. So, I mean, look, the Raiders are playing out of their minds right now. They're actually like, they look like a competent football team, God forbid. And like Tyrell Williams out of this game, he looks like he's still got foot issues. Does concern me a little bit. But I think the Raiders go heavy personnel a lot in this one. They're running the most 22 personnel in the NFL right now. So they're stacking it up, and they want to run the ball. And they want to smash you in the mouth, and they're going to do that with Jacobs. So I like him a lot, and I think the Raiders can actually keep this game close. I mean, because you look at the pack, they're beat up to hell and back, Benny. I mean, like, who is Aaron Rodgers going to throw the ball to this week?
That's a great question, because Devontae Adams missed practice on Thursday. Same with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Geronimo Allison missed practice as well. Via RotoWorld, the Packers have 4 healthy wide receivers, and Allen Lazard, Jake Kumaro, Darius Shepard, and Ryan Grant. And they're still 5.5-point favorites at home. I'll be honest with you, from a betting perspective, I love the Raiders at plus 5.5, plus 6. I think there's going to be casual fans just because they see Green Bay and their record. I'd probably wait on this game because I think it's going to move back up to 6. So I love the Raiders from a betting perspective. And then conversely, I think the biggest question besides which wide receivers for Green Bay are going to play, but what's going to happen at the running back spot? Are we going to go and see Aaron Jones from a couple weeks ago where he starts to control the carries? Is it going to be a combination of Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams? And Williams ended up getting the bulk of the carries last week, considering that Jones, dropped that touchdown pass and had a costly fumble. And let's see, Jamal Williams ended up playing 39 out of 74 snaps, so he was on the field for slightly more than, I think, around 53% of the snaps. So is there a running back or two that you trust in this game, or do you sort of look at it and say, you know what, I think both of these guys are in play against Oakland?
So, to answer my own question, I do like Josh Jacobs. If you're talking about, I like this game to be close, and I like the Raiders side a whole hell of a lot. Just before I get to the Packers, too, Packers are running a ton of zone coverage. You tack that with running backs and tight ends. So Darren Waller is in a great spot in this.
The newly signed Darren Waller, Darren Waller, yeah.
Yep, and I think he's going to – this is one of those weeks where, especially with Tyrell banged up, he's going to sit here and pay off on that contract. But switching back over to the Packers side, dude, it's a mess. That entire offense is a total mess. I think Lazard is in play just because of the injuries. I don't think that Adams obviously plays this week. I think that MBS is questionable at best. Allison is not a guy that I ever rush to put into any lineup unless you're looking at a zone-heavy team, which the Raiders have been doing a really good job of taking away your number one weapon. They run a good mix of coverage. I'm not a huge Allison person. I think Lazard is in play. Like I said, considering Jimmy Graham, there's been weeks I've wanted to go there. I just feel like that time has come and gone. As far as the running backs, dude, you can't feel comfortable playing either one of them. Considering how much Aaron Jones flubbed up last week.
Yeah. And
Aaron Rodgers is all about trust. Jamal Williams did his best to look like a competent NFL back one week and not look like a total just 40-year-old running in slow-mo. And so I think that they split it again, and there's, good luck if you can predict the touchdowns from those two running backs, because it could go to either one of them. And if Aaron Jones keeps fumbling away his opportunities, we could see Jamal Williams take over this backfield. So I'm not looking to play either one of those guys.
I'm not either, but if you're doing a bunch of different lineups and tournaments and you want to throw one in with Aaron Jones, I'm not going to fault you for it, especially after last week. The ownership on him will probably be, less than 4%, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's fair. With the plays this week, I just don't think you need to go there. But I understand your thinking behind it.
All right, let's move on to the game with the highest total on the slate this week. You got the Rams going to Atlanta. Total has moved up from 53.5 to 54.5, and currently the LA Rams, despite 3 straight losses, are now 3-point road favorites over Atlanta, who continues to sputter. They had a great win back in week 2 of the season against Philadelphia. Now, granted, we've seen a little bit more of the Eagles defense to indicate that their struggles on defense, especially in the passing game, are not a fluke. They're just bad in that area. But Matt Ryan, 5 consecutive weeks over 300 yards. I believe he's currently the number 4 highest scoring quarterback in fantasy this year, even ahead of Pat Mahomes, who I believe is number 5. And then conversely, just such good matchups across the board for all these different wide receivers and quarterbacks to really get themselves going. And let's not forget about Jalen Ramsey, who is now currently in LA. Sean McVay spoke on Thursday and said that they're going to try and get him some snaps, but they're not going to promise anything. And we're going to see how much that turnaround works out here. Here's what I think the biggest question is. I don't think anyone's going to be afraid to play Atlanta guys in this matchup, considering what we've seen out of the Rams defense, even with Jalen Ramsey there. The question is, where are you likely to play Jared Goff, even with his struggles going up against arguably the worst pass secondary in the NFL? Because this is a game that I want exposure to on both sides without a doubt.
Yeah, this is by far my favorite game on the entire slate. I think this game is going to just shoot out. You're going to have points going back and forth. I think this is going to be a revisitation of what we saw with the Rams and the Bucs. I feel like this is just going to be boom, 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 nothing but passing. as far as like to weigh in on the Jalen Ramsey stuff, come on, McVay. Like the dude's been there for 4 days. Do you really think he's gonna get the scheme and he's gonna roll out there? Like, look, I stopped believing what the hell you're selling a long, long time ago with all the Todd Gurley stuff. Don't try again with the Ramsey stuff. So anyway, moving on. I think that Goff, if he's gonna have a good game, it's on the strength of, we know that his home road splits are atrocious. They're absolutely god-awful. But what Goff has on his side right here is the fact that the Falcons can't pressure worth a damn. They cannot get pressure after the quarterback. They're at bottom of the league in doing so. If there is a week that you can pencil in Jared Goff to be able to go off and throw and throw and throw and throw, it's this game. Now, my concern about that is I wonder if everybody's going to go that direction. I wonder if he's going to be chalkier than we think he's going to be. And if that's the case and his ownership is a little bit higher, like if he's – and QB ownership is always flat. We always talk about this. But if the Rams' weapons are more heavily owned than the Falcons, or even if they're close, then I'm going to stack the Falcons side all day, all night, all the way through the weekend and love it because you can easily bank that Ryan is going to throw for 300. He's going to throw – it's just a question of how many touchdowns does he get? Is it 3? Is it 4?
Yeah.
Because those things are going to happen, Benny. Like, it's a definite. So I like Goff to an extent because I feel like when he has clean pockets, yes, he can operate. They're not going to run the ball, and they're not going to throw the ball to the running back. So all the Falcons – and running backs and receptions narratives need to get thrown out the window because the Rams are throwing to their running backs the lowest amount in the NFL right now. So whether it's Henderson, Gurley, does not matter because they're not throwing to them. It's all the wide receivers if you're looking to stack this game.
All right, well, let me follow up on that because if we're talking about an opportunity to use running backs, it's against this Atlanta secondary. We saw flashes of brilliance from Darrell Henderson last week. Now, he also had a costly fumble, didn't get the snaps that maybe we thought he would have, especially with no Todd Gurley. And Gurley continues to be questionable. We'll see about Malcolm Brown. He also missed practice a couple times this week. Let's say that there is an injury to one of their running backs, whether it be Gurley, whether it be Brown. In this type of matchup, do you think McVay is sharp enough to use Darrell Henderson in arguably his best potential matchup of the season?
I don't think that he has to go there. I mean, honestly, I feel like whether you have Desmond Trufant, whether he plays or he doesn't, this secondary, Keanu Neal's gone. Like, this secondary just got torched. Let's put this in perspective, Benny. This secondary got torched by Marcus Mariota, who is now riding the pine
to
in
Ryan
Tennessee.
Tannehill, yeah.
Yes. They made him look like a good NFL quarterback. So to say that Jared Goff, who is still going to ride all of his wide receivers, and he's got all of them back, Woods, Kupp, and Cooks are going to be there. I just think it's wash, rinse, repeat. I think Goff is going to take to the air, and it's going to be through the receivers. I don't think that they trust Henderson, and if all those running backs are out, you could see a little bit of John Kelly in the mix, too, because they did activate him.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. As far as the Rams wide receivers to get on, Brandon Cook's probably my favorite guy to target in tournaments of all the wide receivers this week. I know he's so hit or miss, but he's still averaging at least 7 targets in his last 16 games and averaging at least 9 yards per target in his last 16 games as well. So even though the numbers tend to fluctuate a little bit, especially in a dome on the fast track where Goff is going to have plenty of time, the Falcons defense has not been great at getting to the passer this year with the exception of week 2. This is a matchup that I feel really good about for Brandon Cooks this week. And I think as far as tournaments go, he's going to be low owned compared to the rest of the field. A lot of people go back on Cooper Kupp. And so I think this is an opportunity to get him at very low ownership moving on. Let's head on.
I like that. And to your point, before we move on real fast,
yeah,
I think it needs to be said, if you want to be different in stacking this game, fade Kupp and then stack Woods and Cooks, and you're automatically different from the field, probably.
No doubt about it. And then you can still run it back with either Julio or Ridley on the other side.
Yep.
Minnesota is going to Detroit to take on the Lions. This game initially opened with Detroit at -2, but the money has all come in from both sides. Both the public and the sharp money has moved Minnesota into 1-point favorites on the road this week at Ford Field, and the total has gone up about a point from 44 to 45, and it's since back down right around that 44.5 to 45 target range. That's a little bit surprising to me to see that much public money and that much sharp money, Derek, coming in on Minnesota, who did what they were supposed to do against Philadelphia in the passing game. Like, Philadelphia's been bad against the pass all year long. This wasn't a surprise that Stephon Diggs lit him up, that Adam Thielen caught a touchdown, that Diggs caught for 3, that Kirk Cousins threw for over 300 yards. Like, going up against Detroit, I was really impressed by what I saw out of them on Monday night. And I understand that Devontae Adams wasn't on the field, but Detroit should have won that game. And I think of them as a pretty sneaky team. And I guess I'm surprised that they are underdogs at home against Minnesota, considering how one-sided the Vikings have been and their struggles on the road. So from a betting perspective, I like Detroit, especially now that they're underdogs at home. But as far as the matchup goes, I don't know if there's anybody that I really like from either side here. Lions defense is pretty impressive, especially Snacks Harrison continues to be dominant against the run. I know Jamal Williams looked pretty good last week, but you're always a guy that goes to Dalvin Cook. Do you have any hesitation to go to Dalvin Cook this week?
Nope.
Shocker.
Yeah, I know. It's so weird. I never talk good about Dalvin Cook, man.
No, this is the first time.
He's absolutely going to be smashed. Like, if Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, consider him, put up big stat lines versus the Lions, what do we think that Dalvin Cook, who is the best reincarnation of Todd Gurley as far as usage and touchdown equity this year, what do we think that Dalvin Cook is going to do versus this team? I mean, it's going to happen, Benny. I think Dalvin Cook is in a smash spot. What are the other plays that you like out of this game before I sit here and just love some more on my guys?
I mean, certainly Cook is in play. I think you can make an argument to try and give Kerryon another opportunity in this one. Minnesota, just for whatever reason, has not gotten it going on the road, and I do think Kerryon at home, especially if Detroit is able to build up a bit of a lead, they're going to use him, especially about how run dominant that the Lions have wanted to be. But, after that, like, I'm not buying in on Stephon Diggs. I think Adam Thielen's got a tough matchup against Detroit. We'll see what happens with Kenny Golladay. They've been moving him around a little bit, so I don't know if he's going to be a target of yours in your wide receiver cornerback matchup article over at thequantedge.com. But, like, if he's being shadowed by Xavier Rhodes, I want nothing to do with him. But if they move him around, then, yeah, it's an intriguing spot for Golladay.
Well, and I like Golladay just to be different in this one, and the fact that, like, we saw Jeffrey
He's cheap on the salary sites, too.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we saw him put up a good, Jeffrey put up a good spot against Xavier Rhodes. So I think if there's any kind of dive into hashtag defenses don't matter, then Golladay is the number one there. Like, that is unquestioned.
Yeah.
And I think that this could be a good spot to just be different because we know that Stafford's going to chuck the ball deep. That's what Bevel wants to do with him. He's got 2 good wide receivers. You got to love Marvin Jones. He's put up big stat lines versus this team before. And we think of not last year, but the year before on Thanksgiving. I mean, he went over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. We've seen it happen.
Yeah.
So I think Kenny Golladay could easily have a good game. Marvin Jones as well. T.J. Hawkinson. Heck, you saw last week versus Zone. They tried to get Hawk 2 touchdowns. He fell down at the one on one of them and then dropped the other one in the end zone. So Minnesota is not totally shut down versus tight ends. I know that Ertz did not put up a great line, but we've seen Evan Ingram and Darren Waller put up good lines versus them. So I think there's some sneaky spots if you want to sit here and go in for some low-owned guys. As far as the Vikings side, the only person that I care about is Dalvin Cook. I think we've seen Thielen struggle versus the Lions in the past. Now, some of that was without Stephon Diggs, but I think that the Vikings are like, they did what they needed to do. They said, all right, Kirk Cousins, here is a burnable secondary. Mm-hmm. Go towards them. Feel better about yourself. Sleep good at night. And then the next week, we're going to go back.
He already sleeps good at night. He's doing ads for, like, the Sleep Number bed. So he's already sleeping great.
Well, you know what? Then fine. He needs no help. But that was the confidence boost for Kirk Cousins. So now the Vikings say, all right, now we go back to what we really want to do, and that is run the ball, and run the ball, and run the ball, and then throw it to Dalvin Cook, and then run the ball some more. Mm-hmm. So Dalvin Cook is the only player that I like on the Vikings side, and I think he is going to absolutely smash.
One of the questions that I've been getting on Twitter throughout the week is should I sell high on Stephon Diggs? Yes! Unequivocally. Like, this is you're not going to get better value for Stephon Diggs than you will right now.
No. I mean, what more do people need to see out of this? Like, it was, okay, we know the Eagles are coming up, so now you play your Stephon Diggs. Okay, he crushes people's souls, and then you say, hey, would you like Stephon Diggs? Look, he had a good game. You like Stephon Diggs, right? You take him, and then he crushes your soul for the rest of the season. So yes, I mean, what do people need to see? I don't know what else to say about that. Like they need to get rid of him.
Speaking of crushing your soul, the Jaguars are going to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Total in this game it's gone from 44.5 down to 43.5, which is a bit surprising because we'll get into that in just a second because we both really, really like this game. The Jags are 4-point favorites on the road against the winless Bengals in Cincinnati. All right, so if you guys have been watching the Quant Edge video series presented by FantasySportsMarkets.com, you would know that we're very intrigued by this matchup because it has a chance to be super low owned, and there are a ton of players ready to smash on both sides. On Jacksonville, you can go right back to Gardner Minshew in a matchup against a terrible secondary. Cincinnati is not only bad, but they're hurt, which is our two favorite combinations to attack when it comes to fantasy. The bad team and the hurt team, whenever they get to be combined, you always get to feel pretty good about that. So Cincinnati's corners are all banged up, even though they're at home. So I think you can go right back to Gardner Minshew. Lenny Fournette has the second highest usage rate in the NFL behind Christian McCaffrey this year and only has one touchdown. That is going to change this week. And conversely, DJ Chark, T.D. Westbrook once again in play. However, on the Bengals side, and there was a stat that you came across in your 10 Stats You Need to Win article over at thequantedge.com. The Jaguars no longer have Jalen Ramsey. And Jalen Ramsey, amongst all the great things that he did, one of them was actually stopping the run. Not typically something that you would find from the cornerback spot, but why was Jalen Ramsey making such a difference? And conversely, how does that impact this game?
Benny, I went through and through on game logs and snap rates and everything to sit here and find the correlation. Like, what am I missing? Is there a defensive lineman? Did somebody get shot in the foot and not be able to play the second half?
Hope not. That would really suck.
I mean, the thing of it is that everything I went through for the entire defensive line, nothing screamed to me that anybody was hurt or anything else. But if you look at these splits with Jalen Ramsey on and off the field, teams can run at will whenever Ramsey is not on the field. I mean, run success rates go up. Yards per carry went up over 2. It's ridiculous. And we look at these trends and some of these things we say, all right, well, this is noise. Okay, well, this is usable. Okay, this is actionable.
Yeah.
This is legit. This is a thing. And so in believing and saying that, Joe Mixon is going to book it, get 15 touches, if not 20 in this game. If we think it goes and blows out, if we think this game is close, they are going to give the rock to Joe Mixon. You need to play him this week. Get your exposures to Mixon because nobody is going to want to. He's coming off of a game where he had 8 carries for 10 yards. Nobody's going to say, I got to get my Joe Mixon. No. But you need to get exposure to him because he's going to be one of those plays. If he comes in and he gets 100 yards and a touchdown and he's 2% owned, 2 touchdowns, he's going to smash and nobody's going to have him. And you're going to be like, I like money. I really like money. So
the public this year has been on the right side of Joe Mixon when it comes to ownership. On the road at Seattle in a game that Cincinnati almost won, 2.9% ownership. He had 6 carries for 10 yards. The week after that, 11 rushing attempts for 17 yards. His total ownership was 0.5% against San Francisco. And we didn't know San Francisco at the time was good. Then at Buffalo, 1.6%. He had 15 carries for 60 yards, not a terrible day. The loss at Pittsburgh, his ownership was again minuscule. The one time that he had actually decent ownership, 9.3% in the game against Arizona where he was supposed to smash. And he went 19 carries for 93 yards. So Joe Mixon's ownership, the point I'm trying to make here is that it hasn't been above 9.3% all season long. Last week against Baltimore, 3.6%. People don't want to play Joe Mixon, and especially where everyone's likely going to be on the other side of Jacksonville this week. I suppose I shouldn't say everybody, but I think some sharp players will be, knowing that the matchup is advantageous for them and they're not stacking up in this Atlanta and the Rams game. But normally, if you're game stacking, you don't want a running back on the other side. You want to run it back with somebody like Tyler Boyd, who's going to get a bunch of targets. Maybe Auden Tate or something along those lines. But Joe Mixon, I think, could have a smash spot in this game with maybe under 6% ownership this week.
I absolutely agree. And I love both sides of this. So, yeah, I think the knee-jerk response is to go with Boyd if you're looking to run it back, or heck, if you're looking to just get a play out of this game. But the Jag side is great, man. I mean, we know where the ball is going to go for the Jaguars. And if it's all Minshew mania, and we've seen his ceiling, he's thrown for over 300 yards. He's shown some ability with his legs. And so we're talking about how bad the Bengals are. They were bottom of the league as far as giving up rushing production to quarterbacks. And then you see Lamar Jackson go out and just rip them a new one.
Yeah.
and basically just go ham on the ground. Dude almost hit 100 yards before, I think, the end of the first or second quarter. Okay, so Minshew could easily put up basically an extra touchdown in this one if he gets you 50 or 60 yards. Okay, so you might as well put that in the passing touchdown column, and if he goes for 2 and 40 rushing yards, then he's got 3 for you. So I like Minshew. You got to like DJ Chark. Dude's a wide receiver 1 in fantasy right now. I know it's crazy to say, but it's a fact. He's putting up air yards. He's putting up the stats. We know that the ball is going to go to him. It didn't go there last week, but you should have not expected that, because you should have known that Marshawn Lattimore was going to follow DJ Chark. So going into this game, who are they going to put on him? William Jackson is out. Dre Kirkpatrick's out. Their slot corner is garbage. When you're talking about the grand fusion of bad players and injuries, it creates the DFS Voltron, dude. I mean, we're talking about a tournament-destroying robot that could bring you to the top of the leaderboards. What else do you want? Because they have nobody. Their starters are out, so you got to know if the starters are god-awful, the backups are even worse. Mm-hmm. Get your Jaguars in there. Uncle Lenny, you got Minshew and DJ Chark, and win all the monies.
Yeah, and then run it back with Joe Mixon, and then you're the smartest dude in the room, and you feel great because you heard about it first right here on the Fantasy Sports Markets podcast. That's right. Speaking of another game that has sort of some weird implications, you have the 49ers going to Washington to take on the Washington football team that I don't like to say on these broadcasts because it's racist. Total in this game is currently San Francisco -10 on the road, and the total has actually dropped about 1.5 from 42.5 down to 41. This is just me talking. There's no real stats to indicate this, at least nothing that I found. This feels like a trap game for San Francisco, doesn't it? Like West Coast to East Coast, coming off a massive win on the road against the Rams in a show-me game. They know Washington's terrible. Conversely, it's going to be a really slow game because Bill Callahan wants to establish the run with Adrian Peterson. Like, doesn't this feel to you like this could be kind of a grinded-out game for San Francisco? Like, I know that the running backs are always in play for them, but low total in this game, slow, not a lot of possibility for plays. Like, to me, this kind of seems like a matchup I want to avoid, and I think a lot of people are going to want to run and play San Francisco's defense. They're going to want to play Tevin Coleman and Matt Breida, maybe sprinkle in George Kittle in the matchup as well. Where are you? Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo, but I kind of want to fade a lot of these guys this week.
Yeah, this is not really a matchup. I mean, a game that I'm definitively targeting. I think the running backs for San Francisco are always in play.
Sure.
There's nobody on the Redskins side. Like, it's just, you're going up against a legit defense. And as far as the letdown spot, I think Kyle Shanahan, I've read a lot of reports about he's been doing a lot of homework, a lot of prep with his team to make sure this is not a letdown spot. Now, does that come to fruition? Yeah, we'll see, man. It's been a long time since we're talking about the 49ers in legit contention for a playoff berth, much less the division. So, and a team that's never really won consistently, and now they're doing it hand and fist above everybody else. Yeah, I mean, it's a definitive letdown spot. I mean, I think that it could possibly happen, but, man, I like the defense for San Francisco. The running backs are in play, although I'm not rushing to play any of them because you just don't know where the touchdown equity and where the ball is going to go depending on where they're at on the field.
Well, I'll say this. If there's going to be a running back that I trust a little bit more for touchdown equity, it's Tevin Coleman. He got the bulk of the red zone and the goal line carries last week. For whatever reason, they feel a little bit insecure about using Matt Breida around the goal line, and they trust Coleman a lot more.
No, and that's fair. I mean, we've seen Jeff Wilson be that goal line hammer and stuff, so Tevin Coleman assuming that role, that's fine. But the other part about it is, if anything else, I mean, he's not going to get any targets. He's not being used in the passing game. Breida is the one doing all the heavy lifting there, so you're basically splitting an elite RB1 workload.
Yeah, and if you're playing on PPR, right? If you're playing on PPR sites, that doesn't do you much help either.
No, I mean, Tevin Coleman's basically the sexier version of Adrian Peterson right now. I mean, it is. It's true.
No, you're right.
It's true.
You're right.
I mean, he's probably going to see a little bit less volume, but I don't really want any part of this game. I mean, George Kittle, fine if you want to go there, but what's his true ceiling in a slow, nasty, low scoring game with a low total. It's not that high, man. There's other tight ends that I would much rather play this week.
All right, let's get to a game where I think there are some really intriguing options. You have Houston going to Indianapolis. Total in this game has moved down from 48 to 47. This game opened as a pick'em, but since has moved in the Colts' favorite to -1. I think that's surprising to a lot of people. I know that the Colts had a really big win a couple weeks ago, Sunday night on the road against the Chiefs, but Houston just came off a big win against Kansas City. They've looked terrific. Deshaun Watson is right now a top 3 fantasy quarterback, and I think a lot of people are surprised that they're not favorites in this game, which tells me something that Vegas really believes, especially the sharp action, really believes in the Colts in this game. So I'm probably going to end up betting Indianapolis in this one. But as far as the matchup goes, we'll see whether or not T.Y. Hilton ends up being 100% healthy. If he is, I really like him this week. I think especially when it comes to, the Houston defensive line that's gotten a lot of pressure the last couple weeks against the quarterbacks versus Indianapolis' top 3, possibly number 1 offensive line in the NFL. I think that's going to be probably the battle that tells the story of this game.
Yeah, I think this game is very interesting because there's a lot of different avenues that I like in this game. And I mean, you never rush to play Carlos Hyde or any of the running backs from the Texans. But as far as Watson goes, I think that his weapons in this game, because if you look back to last year, we've seen samples of DeAndre Hopkins in 2 of the 3 games, counting the playoffs. He was very quiet, and he got fed 10 or more targets in every single one of them. Now, one of those games was a blow-up spot for him, and we haven't seen that. So I don't know if people are going to rush to play Hopkins this week, but this could be a get-right spot for him. And as far as the other wide receivers, I mean, we've seen Will Fuller go off. We've talked about Will Fuller week.
Yeah, Will Fuller dropped what, 2 or 3 touchdowns last week?
3 touchdowns.
After he had a 3-touchdown week the week before.
Yep, and so we've seen both sides of the coin for Will Fuller. So if ownership is high on him this week, again, he's an easy fade. Now, the interesting spot in this is that does Kenny Stills play? If Kenny Stills plays, then I want none of this player. If Kenny Stills is out versus the Colts zone defense, we have seen Kiki Kuti absolutely eat. And one of those games, if you go check out my Twitter timeline, he has put up 100 yards in both of those games, 1 touchdown in the playoffs versus them. He has had, I want to say off the top of my head, 11 or more targets in each game. And the dude's been putting it up. And that's how you attack zone. You attack it with running backs, tight ends, and underneath the receivers. And if Stills is out, Kuti could be the spot if you're looking for somebody low-owned and cheap.
Did you mention whether or not Will Fuller was playing in those games as well?
He played in one of those 2 games.
Okay. And so, but the numbers were still relatively the same.
He had 15 targets in the game Fuller was there.
Wow. Okay, so yeah, Kiki Kuti, especially on the salary sites, probably not a play over at fantasy sports markets, but certainly on the salary sites could absolutely be in play. We have the Arizona Cardinals, another fun game that I think we can get behind in fantasy this week. They are on the road against the New York Giants. The Cardinals have won 2 in a row. Conversely, the Giants have lost 2 in a row, but they've also had their competition get much more difficult over the last couple of weeks as well. They're coming off a game that they actually were into for a while against the Patriots. Right now, the Giants are 3-point favorites at home. The total has moved up from 48.5 to 50.5. It's been great to see the emergence of Kyler Murray really over the last few weeks for Arizona. And even without Christian Kirk, he's really stepped up as far as improving goes. They've continued to keep Larry Fitzgerald incorporated in the mix. And then on the Giants side, Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes has got some really intriguing spots, especially with the news that I think Evan Ingram was able to practice in full today. Not so sure about Sterling Shepard. There's another wide receiver that I'm missing out on that I'm blanking out on for the Giants that also was back at practice today. But regardless, they could be getting healthy at an ideal time for them. And so one guy that actually really stepped up last week, you had mentioned, I think you tweeted about him earlier in the week too, and that was Darius Slayton. Assuming that it's just him and Golden Tate, is he an absolute play for you this week?
Yeah, I mean, I like Slayton. So I like Slayton a lot more if Shepard plays, because I think if Peterson, who is back, is going to follow anybody, I think it's more likely Sterling Shepard than it is Darius Slayton. So if Shep is back, I like Slayton more. I think Golden Tate is absolutely in play because we know Peterson is not going to follow him to the slot. That's not going to happen. So on the Giants side, my favorite play, I love Daniel Jones this week. I like it. I mean, like, look, you don't need any stats to tell you to play Evan Ingram. We all know that Arizona is god-awful against tight ends. That's not
Yeah.
changing. Saquon Barkley is in a smash spot. He's been full participant in practice. So I think this is a huge get-right spot for the entire Giants offense. On the Cardinals side, that the Giants secondary has gotten roasted. Absolutely roasted. They're at the bottom of the league in explosive pass rates allowed. So Fitz is absolutely in play. The other wide receivers, I mean, Kirk is probably not back because they talked about he's not 100%, and he's not back until he will be 100%. We know that the running backs are banged up for Arizona, so I think if David Johnson, we saw that Edmonds got worked in last week. We know he's not 100%. I think both of those running backs are in play, and then both could be lower on because we just don't know. But if David Johnson is a late call-out or he gets ruled out late, then Edmonds is basically a free square for you. But I like both of those running backs. I think there's a lot of spots just to attack with this because we've seen Kyler Murray. He's been throwing the ball deep again, Benny. Like there's no zone coverage. Just sit there and sit back on him and make him force the ball underneath. With him chucking the ball deep against a secondary that's been burnt deep religiously, I like both sides of the ball on here, and I feel like it's a really easy game to stack because we know where the ball is going to go.
Yeah, Kyler Murray finished with 340 yards and 3 touchdowns last week against Atlanta. He's also had back-to-back weeks of running the ball more than 10 times in a game. He had 11 rushing attempts for 32 yards against Atlanta, 10 rushing attempts the previous week against Cincinnati for 93 yards and a touchdown. So anytime that he's starting to get that Josh Allen type of floor in the running game, plus just he's an overall better quarterback, I think this is a great spot, especially for somebody like Kyler Murray. We continue with the Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. Talk about moving on from the matchup that we actually have some intrigue on to one that we really just don't have.
That's a professional segue right there. That's a professional transition.
Yes, unfortunately, these guys are not going to be playing a professional football game. At least half of these teams I wouldn't constitute as that. Total right now, I think the last I've seen is Buffalo at -17. It's been bet down just a tiny bit to -16.5. I guess there's a little bit of action coming in on Miami at that number, but the total has gone up. It opened at 39.5 and has since moved up to 41.5. Ryan Fitzmagic. I should say Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ryan Fitzmagic, is going to get the start. They said, we're sticking with Josh Rosen. We believe in Josh Rosen, and now they don't. So I'm not sure why they're going back to Fitzpatrick other than to try and honor a revenge game for him. But then again, can you have a revenge game? I think we talked about this maybe a couple weeks ago. Can you have a revenge game if you've played for every other team in the league? Like, I don't think you can.
No, I mean, basically you just hate the rest of the NFL. So every game is your last game and your revenge game.
Right. So from that standpoint, like, Buffalo's defense is tremendous, and I think they're going to have Fitzpatrick throwing a bunch of interceptions in this game. He might complete a couple deep passes. Maybe Albert Wilson breaks one free, and Devontae Parker's been playing better, and they still have Preston Williams. Like there's still some guys that can play on Miami, but not worthy for me to want to consider starting any of them in DFS this week. And conversely, on the Buffalo side, like, are we wanting to go back to Frank Gore against Miami? Or especially from, I think Josh Allen is going to be popular, and we'll see what happens with John Brown. But who do you like from this game, if anybody at all?
I like Josh Allen, and he smashes terrible defenses. If you head over to 10 stats this week, I break it all down. I mean, basically, he's just averaging through the roof, rushing-wise. If you look at what he did versus Miami last year, I know it's a different coaching staff, same personnel. There's another reason why, even if he's popular, it's easy to stack Josh Allen. Like, if John Brown plays, which we know he's got a groin injury, then it's Josh Allen, John Brown, and you move on. If it's not John Brown and he's out, then you just roll with Robert Foster. He's the direct backup to John Brown. He's basically free on any salary site. You know his role. We've seen him do it. We've seen him smash. It's easy. Play Josh Allen, play whoever's in the John Brown role, and move on to the next game. I don't want any Dolphins. I care about any of that. If you even wanted to stack it and you want to do something else, go Josh Allen, the wide receiver in that role, and the Buffalo defense. And again, just click and move on.
I think so. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Let's get to the afternoon slate. We got about 10 minutes or so left to go through these, so we'll go through them a little bit on the quicker side. You have the Chargers going to Tennessee. Totals moved up quite a bit from 38.5 to 41. I can't imagine that's the result of Ryan Tannehill getting the start over Marcus Mariota, but that certainly looks to be the case, and the total has actually moved up in a positive direction for Tennessee from -1 to -2. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with the Chargers because I really like them quite a bit to start the year. And since Melvin Gordon came back, this team has been abysmal on the offensive side of the ball. One thing you can absolutely point to for the lack of success is not getting Keenan Allen the ball. First 3 weeks of the season, Keenan Allen's target share was 10, 15, and 17. The previous 3 weeks against Miami, Denver, and Pittsburgh, 5, 6, and 6. He has yet to go over 100 yards in the last 3 games combined. So, Debro, do you think this is an issue where if Rivers is just not getting the ball enough to Keenan Allen, that their running game has just gone backwards a little bit, not using Austin Eckler in the way that we saw them the first 3 weeks of the season? Because right now their offense looks like a mess, but I'm surprised that they're underdogs against an underachieving Tennessee team. I think from a talent standpoint, the Chargers are the far superior team here.
I think this is a very interesting game. I think it all comes down to there was some rumblings that Russell Okung might play in this game. And so I think it all comes down to how Phillip Rivers can do being under pressure. Tennessee's defense is good. I think this could be a sneaky get-right spot for them. Because if you look at Phillip Rivers' box scores, he's basically been like the poor man's Matt Ryan. The dude's almost thrown for 300 yards in every single game. And multiple touchdowns in almost every single game. And so the volume is there. Keenan Allen, this offense needs to go through Keenan Allen. That's the fact. And so I think that they get back to business. I think Rivers is a sneaky tournament play in this one, so is Allen. If you're looking to stack it up on the other side, I think Tennessee, I like A.J. Brown because the dude has back-breaking potential every single week. Derrick Henry is good if you want to run it back as well because the Chargers' run defense is god-awful. We've seen multiple running backs that actually just smash them in the mouth. I mean, Phillip Lindsay had a great game a few weeks ago. Maybe that was last week. And I like this game as a sneaky tournament play. I won't have anybody outside of those two people for the Tennessee side. But as far as the Chargers, I don't think you can play Gordon and Eckler until we see this offensive line possibly get a little bit healthier. So it's Rivers, Allen, or Mike Williams because Malcolm Butler is still #not good.
Yeah, and I think this is – I think if you really want to get even more contrarian, Rivers and Mike Evans in this matchup, again, just from a height advantage on Butler and the rest of the Tennessee secondary, I could see this being a 2-touchdown performance out of Mike Evans that nobody really sees coming. We continue. The Ravens are going to Seattle. Total in this game is at 49, and the Seahawks have moved from 4-point favorites down to -3.5. I was reading up on some stuff over at the Action Network, and the sharp guys are pounding the hell out of the Ravens in this matchup, and a lot of the big public money is coming in on Seattle, which always makes me think about the matchup at hand. And I'm starting to think, at least from a fantasy standpoint, like Seattle's defense, even at home, doesn't really scare me. And so Lamar Jackson is coming off a slate-breaking performance last week. Granted, it was against Seattle, but you can move and you can throw on the Seattle's defense, and they're not getting pressure on the quarterback either. So I think the Ravens are absolutely in play, and that might be another low-owned spot for a lot of these guys on the Baltimore side.
Yep, I played a lot of Ravens last week. I'm going back to this week. I love Lamar Jackson. You look at the Seahawks are bottom of the league in pressure. When he's allowed and he's had a clean pocket, Lamar Jackson has a top 10 accuracy and completion rate in the NFL. So give him time. He's going to pick people apart. I think that's absolutely in play. I like the Ravens a lot more if Marquise Brown plays. I don't think that happens this week, but I'll go back to it, man. The Seahawks are running a ton of zone, so you get your Mandrews exposure. You get Miles Boykin in tournaments because he's going to assume that Marquise Brown role. He's going to hopefully come down with a deep shot in this one. As far as Seattle, you want Chris Carson. That's about the only player that I'll look in this one. And people are like, oh, what about Tyler Lockett? Dude, Marlon Humphrey is a legit top of the league shutdown corner. Mm-hmm. And what we saw from Tyler Boyd, Humphrey will follow him to the slot, and I don't care, man. Look, Marlon Humphrey has shut down in the last 4 weeks a plethora of elite receivers. Sammy Watkins, OBJ, Tyler Boyd, just to name a few, have done next to nothing versus this guy. Juju Smith-Schuster is the only person that went for 49 yards or more in a touchdown versus Humphrey in primary coverage. I don't want anything besides Carson to do on the Seattle side.
Really quickly, do you have any interest in Luke Wilson in tournaments, considering how often Russell Wilson was targeting Will Dissly?
Nope. I think it's being too cute.
Okay. Last matchup of the afternoon slate, you have the Saints, your Saints, taking on my Bears in Soldier Field. Not a lot of fantasy goodness, though. The total has moved from 39.5 to 38.5. The Bears need to get themselves right on defense, especially coming off a bad loss against the Raiders not in Oakland, but in London a couple weeks ago. They're coming off a bye. They need to get back on track in a tough division. I know they're only 3-2. But a 4-2 opportunity here against one of the best teams in the NFC is certainly looking like a positive for them. I think they can handle Teddy Bridgewater. I think they're facing Alvin Kamara at the right time, especially because Akeem Hicks he just went on IR, and that's the glue in making sure that their running game is effective. So I don't think they're concerned about Latavius Murray. I think a banged up Alvin Kamara doesn't scare them. And I think they have enough of a defensive personnel to slow down Michael Thomas and not really worry about the rest of the wide receivers for New Orleans. But if there's any play on this game that you like, maybe you're looking at the defenses here, Debro. But I'll say this. P.J. Williams just got a 2-game suspension for violation of the NFL substance abuse policy. Whatever he was taking wasn't helping him. So he's still bad, and he was taking something to help him. He is now missing 2 games. I can't imagine a worse slot corner than P.J. Williams, and they're going to get him. Anthony Miller, a couple weeks ago, took off the thing that was bothering him on his shoulder after all the shoulder separations last year, and he started to feel much more comfortable. I think he's worth a tournament throw and a couple dart throws this weekend, but after that, there's not a whole lot that I like here.
No, and I think the slot usage for both of those players, for Anthony Miller, I think puts him in play. The other sneaky spot is I think we've seen Tariq Cohen is leading the league in slot routes from the RB
That's
position.
Right.
So
yeah, they've used them there quite a bit.
Those are 2 great spots to sit here and target as far as the Bears side. On the Saints side, I like Latavius Murray. I think Kamara is trending more towards doubtful or out. We saw what the Raiders did to beat the Bears, and that's to load up heavy personnel and run the damn ball at them. And so I think that the Saints are going to follow suit. I think that Sean Payton is smart enough to sit here and say, okay, that's how somebody beat you. Let's just smash you in the mouth this week. The defense is good. Let's lean on it. And so I think that Latavius Murray, if Kamara is out, Latavius Murray is a great play this week. I think nobody wants to play him. He's not a sexy player, but he's going to get 20-plus touches in a team that has still an elite offensive line and wants to run the ball. And I will say this before we move on. I promise not to send any texts to you this week when the Saints are winning this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to take the Bears at -3 if that number still kicks around. Maybe it'll be another Eddie Pinheiro field goal over the Saints. It's just going to be low scoring and physical. And listen, the Bears' offensive line from a couple weeks ago was just not prepared to take on the physicality of Oakland. I think they'll be prepared a little bit more for New Orleans, and especially coming off a bye week. I think they'll look in better shape in this game. So I wish you luck, but not too much luck, because the Bears really, really need this win.
I hate, I'm not going to make you cry. We'll just move on.
All right, fair enough. Really quickly, the Sunday night matchup, you have the Eagles and the Cowboys. Monday night, the Patriots are going to the New York Jets. Any must-plays if you're looking at, the Sunday to Monday primetime slate over on FSM or any of the other daily sites? Anybody from either of these games that you really love this week?
I mean, with the Eagles, I really like Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. Dallas running a lot of zone, so you tackle with tight ends. I think that the running backs, like Jordan Howard's in play. The Dallas side, they're going to have a lot of problems, man. I think Amari Cooper's not going to play. And you look at the Eagles, how they play defense. I mean, they're elite versus the run. As bad as their secondary is, I just don't know that Dak's going to be able to take advantage of it. And as far as the Monday night matchup, who's going up on the Monday one? I'm totally blanking.
Patriots are visiting the New York Jets. The Patriots are
the Jets. That's why
their Patriots are 10-point favorites on the road.
Yeah. Look, I think that game is going to be interesting. I think we saw Sam Darnold actually play better coming back from mono.
Yep.
So that game's interesting. I think it could be a sneaky spot for Lev Bell. And Jamison Crowder in that game. I don't think that you want any part of Robbie Anderson versus Stephon Gilmore. As far as the Patriots side of it, we'll see, man. If Dorsett plays, then he's in play for me. Gordon is looking like he's trending out. I never want to play Sonny Michel because the guy's running on 80-year-old man knees. But I think it could be a good spot for James White. I think it's a good spot for whoever has that deep role for the Pats, man. We know Edelman's going to eat, but if Dorsett's out, Jacoby Myers could have a very, very nice game and has some deep targets in this one.
So there you go. That's our breakdown for the Week 7 NFL slate. Make sure you head over to thequantedge.com, read all of Derek's work, including the 10 stats you need to win article, as well as the wide receiver cornerback matchup article. Anything else that I'm missing from you this week?
Nah, man. We covered it all. That's all the content. 10 stats will be out on Thursday. Wide receiver cornerback matchup is rocking on Friday, and let's get you ready to sit here and dominate the week.
So there you go. Make sure you guys are following him on Twitter as well, at Debro_FFB. You can follow me at Benny Heiss. And watch out for more of the Quant Edge video series videos that we release throughout the course of the week. Make sure you guys are following us as well as Fantasy Sports Markets at FSM Contests on the Tweet Machine. So remember all the stuff that we taught you, run it back, use that promo code TQE over at fantasysportsmarkets.com and enter for free. For Derek, I'm Ben. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. If you're only on the audio podcast side, we will be back again next week breaking down the Week 8 slate for you.